Stop whining. It's already sold." Those 5 words shattered my world. My son David stood in my kitchen like he owned the place, arms crossed, completely unbothered by what he'd just done. I stared at him, my hands still wet from washing dishes, Robert's coffee mug trembling in my grip. "You sold your father's watch without asking me?" "Mom, seriously, get over it. It's just a watch." Just a watch. 6 months after burying my husband of 43 years, and my own son had stolen the only thing of Robert's I wore every day? The watch I wound every morning like Robert taught me, feeling connected to him through that simple ritual. If you're watching this, hit subscribe right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. You won't believe where this story goes. The thing about betrayal is that it has a taste, bitter, metallic, like pennies on your tongue. Standing there in my Chicago kitchen, staring at my 42-year-old son, who apparently thought grief had an expiration date, I tasted it fully for the first time. "Which pawn shop?" I asked quietly. David's wife, Jennifer, looked up from her phone. "Oh, good, she's being reasonable now." Her voice dripped with condescension. "Honestly, Margaret, clinging to material possessions isn't healthy. Robert wouldn't want you living in the past." Don't tell me what Robert would want, I thought, but bit my tongue. "Golden State Pawn on Milwaukee Avenue," David said, checking his watch. An expensive Apple thing that probably cost more than Robert's watch was worth. "They gave me $800. Not bad for something that old." $800 for a 1978 Rolex Submariner that Robert had saved 3 months of overtime to buy when David was born. The watch Robert wore every single day of our marriage except the day he died, when the hospital handed it to me in a plastic bag with his wedding ring. "That watch was worth at least $3,000, I said. Jennifer snorted. "In what universe? It wasn't even running properly." "Because I was the one winding it, keeping it alive, keeping Robert alive in some small way. I'm going to get it back," I announced. "Good luck with that," David said, heading for the door. "We fly out tomorrow morning. Jennifer's been planning this trip for months." The door slammed, leaving me alone with the silence that had become my constant companion since Robert died. But here's what David and Jennifer didn't know about their pathetic old mother. I'd spent 40 years as a bank manager. I knew the difference between giving up and strategic planning, and I was done giving up. The pawn shop was exactly what I'd expected, cramped, dusty, with fluorescent lighting that made everything look sickly. The man behind the counter had arms covered in tattoos and the weary expression of someone who'd seen every sob story in the book. "You're here about the Rolex?" he asked before I even opened my mouth. "How did you know?" "Your son warned me you might show up, said you were having a hard time letting go." He shrugged apologetically. "Look, lady, I feel for you, but business is business. I paid fair market value." Fair market value, as if there was a standard price for 43 years of marriage. "I'll buy it back, whatever you need." The man's name tag read Danny. He looked uncomfortable. "It's already sold. Guy came in this morning, paid cash. No returns in this business." My heart sank. Some stranger was walking around Chicago wearing Robert's watch. "But," Danny continued, lowering his voice, "we found something weird when we were cleaning it up for sale." He disappeared into a back room and returned with a small envelope. There was a hidden compartment in the back. Real professional job. Had to have been done by a jeweler. Found this inside. Inside the envelope was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. In Robert's careful handwriting, "Margaret's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I'd marry her." Below that, a series of numbers in letters. SS4457CH0815MS. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. Robert had never mentioned any hidden compartment. In 43 years of marriage, he'd kept this secret hidden in plain sight on his wrist. "Which numbers?" I asked suddenly. "The guy who bought the watch. What did he look like?" Danny's expression shifted, became guarded. "Why?" "Because my husband hid this for a reason." Danny was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. He didn't say much, but when I mentioned we'd found something inside, he got real interested, asked if we'd opened it. A chill ran down my spine. "Did he give you a name?" "Paid cash, no paperwork required." Paused. "But he did ask specifically about watches that had come in recently, said he collected vintage Rolexes." Someone had been looking for Robert's watch specifically. But why? That night, I sat at Robert's desk, surrounded by 43 years of financial records. The code from the watch stared up at me. SS4457CH0815MS. I searched every account we owned. Nothing matched those numbers. Robert had been financially conservative. Savings account, checking account, a modest retirement fund. Nothing fancy, nothing hidden. Or so I thought. My phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, Jennifer's upset. She says you made a scene at the pawn shop." I almost laughed. "I went to buy back your father's watch. Unfortunately, someone else already purchased it." "See? Problem solved. Time to move on." The casualness in his voice made my chest tighten with anger. "David, there was something hidden inside the watch. Your father left me a message." Silence. Then, "What kind of message?" Something in his tone made me hesitate. This was the most interested David had sounded about his father since the funeral. "Just some numbers," I said vaguely. "Probably nothing important." "Maybe I should come over, help you figure it out." Now I did laugh. "Yesterday you told me to stop living in the past. Today you want to help sort through Robert's things?" "I'm just trying to be supportive." "By stealing his watch?" After he hung up, I stared at the phone. David's sudden interest was suspicious. Unless Robert's possessions weren't just sentiment. I started looking for patterns. Robert had been an accountant. He thought in systems, in logical progressions. SS could be Social Security. Robert's number started with 457, but not 4457. CH could be Chicago, where we'd lived our entire marriage. 0815 made me pause. August 15th, our wedding anniversary. MS was harder. Robert's initials were RS. Mine were MS, Margaret Sullivan. The code included my initials. 3 hours later, I found it. Secure Solutions Investment Management, based in the Cayman Islands. Their website was discreet, professional, catering to high net worth individuals seeking privacy. With trembling fingers, I typed SS4457CH0815MS in the client number field. Valid account number appeared on the screen. Now I needed the password, something only I would know. I tried our wedding date, our address, my birthday. Nothing. Then I remembered the note. Margaret's birthday, July 15th, 1955, the day I knew I'd marry her. Not my actual birthday. July 15th was the day we met at a summer dance in Millennium Park. I typed in 07155 and held my breath. Access granted. The screen that loaded next made me gasp. Current account balance, $2,847,299.67. Robert had hidden nearly $3 million from me for my entire marriage. I stared at the screen until the numbers burned into my brain. Every argument we'd had about money, every time I'd clipped coupons or bought generic groceries, all while Robert had millions sitting offshore. But then I clicked on the account history. The first deposit was made in 1982, 3 years after David was born, $5,000 with the notation Initial Inheritance Investment, RS. Robert had never mentioned any inheritance. I scrolled through years of deposits, all relatively small, 500 here, 1,000 there, regular contributions that explained why Robert had been so careful with our household budget. The deposits continued until 2008, then jumped dramatically. Instead of hundreds, Robert had been depositing $10,000 and $20,000 at a time. The notation on those larger deposits made my blood run cold. Real estate liquidation, Chicago properties. Robert had been buying and selling real estate without my knowledge. I clicked on account messages and found a folder labeled For Margaret, Emergency Access Only. Inside was a video file uploaded 3 months before Robert died. I hesitated before clicking play, but I was alone at midnight. My son had stolen the only clue to this mystery, and I was apparently wealthy beyond my wildest dreams. Ready or not, I needed answers. Robert's face filled the screen. Margaret, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and something's gone wrong. His voice was steady, but his eyes looked sad. I hoped you'd never need to access this account, that we'd grow old together and I'd eventually tell you about it over dinner someday. He paused, rubbing his face. The money isn't mine, sweetheart. It was my father's, hidden away before he died in 1981. He made me promise to keep it secret, to protect it, to only use it if our family was ever in real danger. Robert looked directly into the camera. I've been investing the money carefully. Every penny is documented. Every transaction is legal. It's grown because I've been reinvesting for 40 years, but the original amount was meant to be emergency money, insurance against catastrophe. The video continued with Robert explaining account details, but I was stuck on one phrase. I hoped you'd never need to access this account. Robert had died of a sudden heart attack. How could he have known I'd need this money? Unless the catastrophe he'd been protecting against wasn't random. The next morning, I started with Robert's recent transactions. His last deposit had been made 2 weeks before he died, $25,000 with the notation Property Sale, Emergency Liquidation. Emergency liquidation? Robert had been converting assets to cash right before his death. I spent hours researching every property transaction. Robert had apparently been a secret real estate investor, buying and selling properties all over Chicago. But here's what made my blood run cold. Every property Robert had sold in the last year had been purchased by the same buyer, Sullivan Investments, LLC. Sullivan was David's last name, too. I called my nephew Daddy, who worked in real estate. Aunt Margaret, how are you holding up? I'm fine, honey. Listen, have you ever heard of a company called Sullivan Investments, LLC? Danny was quiet for a moment. Actually, yeah, they've been pretty active lately, buying up properties in good neighborhoods, cash deals, moving fast. Why? Do you know who owns the company? I can find out. Give me an hour. I spent that hour going through Robert's desk more carefully. Hidden in the back of his filing cabinet behind 40 years of tax returns, I found a folder marked Insurance Policies. But instead of insurance documents, the folder contained property deeds and correspondence. At the bottom was a letter from a private investigator dated 6 months before Robert's death. Mr. Sullivan, per your request, I've completed the investigation into your son, David Sullivan's financial activities. My findings are concerning. Your son has accumulated approximately $180,000 in gambling debts to several offshore betting sites. He's also taken out multiple high-interest loans using fraudulent information about his income and assets. Of greater concern are the inquiries Mr. Sullivan has been making about your estate. He's contacted 3 different lawyers asking about inheritance law and the process for contesting wills. He's also made inquiries about power of attorney procedures and elder care facilities. I believe your son is planning to have you declared incompetent in order to gain control of your assets. I recommend taking immediate steps to protect your assets and ensure your wife's financial security. Regards, Thomas Chen, Private Investigator. My phone rang. Danny. Aunt Margaret, Sullivan Investments, LLC is owned by David Sullivan, your David. I closed my eyes, the pieces falling into place. Robert hadn't been hiding money from me. He'd been hiding it from David. Every property sale, every cash deposit, every emergency liquidation had been Robert systematically moving assets out of David's reach. Robert had known his own son was planning to rob us, but Robert died before he could warn me, leaving only the hidden compartment in his watch as a clue. David hadn't stolen Robert's watch for vacation money. He'd stolen it because he was looking for exactly what I had found. I was still sitting at Robert's desk when I heard Jennifer's key in my front door. "Margaret, are you here?" Jennifer's voice echoed through the house, artificially sweet. I quickly shoved the investigator's report back into the folder and minimized the offshore account on my laptop. "I'm in the bedroom," I called back. They appeared in the doorway, David carrying a small suitcase, Jennifer wearing designer sunglasses that probably cost more than most people's rent. "Just wanted to say goodbye," David said, but his eyes were scanning Robert's desk, taking inventory. "What are you working on?" "Sorting through your father's things," I said carefully. Jennifer stepped closer, her gaze focused on my laptop. "Find anything interesting?" "Just old bank statements. Your father was very thorough with his paperwork." David relaxed slightly. "Yeah, Dad was obsessive about record-keeping." "Actually," I said, deciding to test their reaction, "I did find something odd. Your father had some kind of investment account I didn't know about. Nothing major, just a few thousand." The change in both their expressions was immediate. David stepped forward. "An investment account? What kind?" "I'm not sure yet. The paperwork is confusing." Jennifer exchanged a quick glance with David. "We could help you with that." "I bet you could," I thought. "That's very kind, but I already made an appointment with Robert's old accounting firm." David's jaw tightened. "Mom, those guys charge $300 an hour." "I can afford $300 an hour." The silence that followed was loaded with tension. "We should probably be going," Jennifer said finally. "Don't want to miss our flight." But David didn't move. "Mom, about the message you found in Robert's watch, maybe I should take a look before we leave." "What message?" Jennifer asked sharply. David shot her a warning look. "Mom found some kind of code in the watch." Now Jennifer was fully alert. "What kind of code?" I stood up slowly. "The kind that's none of your business." Jennifer's face flushed red. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. My husband left me a private message, private being the operative word." "Mom," David stepped between us. "We're family. There's no need for secrets." "Secrets?" I almost laughed. "Like the secret gambling debts or the secret company you've been using to buy properties with money you don't have?" The color drained from David's face. "I don't know what you're talking about," David said, his voice shaky. "Sullivan Investments, LLC, ring a bell?" I watched both their faces go pale. "Your father knew, David. Your father knew everything." Jennifer recovered first, her voice turning vicious. "You crazy old woman! I know your husband owes $180,000 to offshore gambling sites. I know he's been researching how to have me declared incompetent, and I know he's been planning this for months." David slumped against the doorframe. "How?" he whispered. "Your father hired a private investigator." I pulled out the report. "Every lie, every debt, every plan you made to steal from us, it's all documented." I walked to the desk. "Robert protected me from you even after his death. That code you're so interested in, it's the key to more money than you've ever dreamed of, money that will never, ever belong to you." Jennifer grabbed David's arm. "We need to leave, now." But David was staring at me with something that looked like respect for the first time in years. He really knew. "What kind of man does that make you, David?" For just a moment, David looked like the little boy I'd raised, confused and ashamed. Then Jennifer's grip tightened, and the moment passed. "This isn't over," Jennifer hissed as they headed for the door. "Yes, it is," I called after them. "It's been over since the day you decided I was worth more to you, dead than alive." 2 days later, my doorbell rang at 8 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in an expensive suit holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm Catherine Wells from Wells Morrison and Associates. We represent your son in some family legal matters." I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Your son is concerned about your well-being. We've drafted some documents that would give David power of attorney over your financial decisions, just temporarily, until you've had time to properly grieve." "Temporarily," I repeated. "And who determines when my grieving period is over?" There it was, exactly what the private investigator had warned about. "Temporarily?" I repeated. "And who determines when my grieving period is over?" "That would be at your discretion, naturally." "Naturally." Catherine's voice sharpened. "Mrs. Sullivan, your son is prepared to file a petition regarding your mental competency, accessing offshore accounts, conducting international financial transactions without professional guidance. To an outside observer, it might appear you're not thinking clearly." The threat was crystal clear. Sign over power of attorney voluntarily, or they'd have me declared incompetent by force. "You know what's interesting about threats?" I asked. "They only work if the person you're threatening doesn't have better lawyers than you do." Catherine's mask slipped. "I beg your pardon?" "You can tell my son that his plan won't work. Robert left me more than just money. He left me protection." I closed the door and immediately called Thomas Chen, the private investigator. "Mrs. Sullivan, I've been expecting your call. Robert told me you might need my services someday." "What kind of services?" "About 6 months ago, Robert asked me to prepare a comprehensive legal defense package in case anyone tried to challenge your competency or your right to his assets. Everything's ready to go." Robert had been 3 steps ahead, even in death. "How ready?" "By the time I'm done presenting evidence of your son's gambling debts, fraudulent loan applications, and attempts to manipulate you, he'll be lucky if he doesn't face criminal charges." For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. "Mr. Chen, I think it's time to make some phone calls." Thomas Chen's office was downtown. As I sat across from him reviewing Robert's defense package, I realized my husband had been planning for this confrontation long before he died. "Your husband was thorough," Thomas said, spreading documents across his desk. Bank records showing David's gambling losses, audio recordings of him discussing plans to have you declared incompetent, even photographs of him meeting with lawyers. "Audio recordings?" Thomas nodded. "Robert suspected David was planning something, so he had your house wired for sound last year, completely legal since it was his own property. Every conversation David and Jennifer had in my kitchen over the past 6 months, every dismissive comment about my mental state, every calculation about Robert's assets, every cruel joke about putting me in a nursing home, Robert had heard it all. There's more." Thomas continued. "Robert also discovered that Jennifer has been systematically isolating you from family and friends. She's been telling people you're becoming senile." The pieces clicked into place. Why my sister-in-law had stopped calling, why neighbors seemed awkward, why my book club friends had been treating me like I was fragile. Jennifer had been conducting a whisper campaign, preparing the groundwork for David's legal challenge. Thomas pulled out a thick folder. "But there's something else. Robert left specific instructions about what to do if you ever needed to access the offshore account." He handed me a sealed envelope with my name in Robert's handwriting. Inside was a letter dated 1 week before Robert's death. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then David has shown his true colors, and you've discovered the account I've been building for 40 years. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive, but I needed to protect it from David until the time was right. The money isn't just an inheritance, it's justice. Every penny came from investments I made using information David thought he was hiding from us. When he started his real estate company, he would brag about his deals and guaranteed investments. What he didn't know was that I was listening and investing in the same opportunities with money he didn't know existed. David unknowingly funded his own downfall. Now it's your turn. Thomas has instructions to make the account transfers immediately. By the time you read this letter, you'll have financial independence David can never touch. But more importantly, you'll have the power to choose how this ends. You can forgive him and hope he learns to be a better man, or you can let him face the consequences of trying to steal from his own mother. The choice is yours, my love. It always has been. Forever yours, Robert." I set the letter down with shaking hands. Robert hadn't just protected me from David, he'd orchestrated David's downfall using David's own schemes against him. "Mrs. Sullivan," Thomas was watching me carefully, "are you ready to proceed?" I thought about David as a little boy, excited about his first day of school. Then I thought about him standing in my kitchen calling me a crazy old woman while his wife threatened me. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. "Mr. Chen, I want you to file every piece of evidence we have with the appropriate authorities, and I want you to do it today." The next morning brought chaos to my quiet neighborhood. I was sipping coffee when 3 black SUVs pulled up to David and Jennifer's house across the street. Men in FBI windbreakers started carrying boxes out of their front door. My phone rang immediately. "Mom?" David's voice was panicked. "What did you do?" "I protected myself," I said calmly, watching through my kitchen window. "What you should have done for your family instead of trying to rob them." "You don't understand. This will destroy us." "You destroyed yourselves. I just documented it." Jennifer's voice came through the phone, shrill and angry. "You vindictive old witch!" By stealing my husband's watch, by planning to have me declared incompetent, by spreading lies about my mental health to isolate me from friends and family? The line went quiet. "Robert knew everything, David. Every debt, every lie, every plan you made to rob us. He spent the last year of his life protecting me from his own son." I heard David make a sound like a wounded animal. "The FBI is seizing your business records because Robert's evidence shows you've been using fraudulent information to secure loans. The IRS is auditing you, and the state attorney's office is investigating you for elder abuse." "Mom, please." David's voice broke. "I never meant it to go this far." "When did it start, David? When did you decide your mother was worth to you dead than alive?" Long silence. When David spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "When I realized Dad had been hiding money, I saw some paperwork in his office last Christmas, references to accounts I'd never heard of. I thought if you both died, everything would come to me automatically." The honesty was brutal, but somehow cleaner than months of lies. "You were wrong. Robert made sure everything would be protected from you." "How much?" David asked. "How much did he hide?" "Enough to ensure I never have to depend on family who sees me as a burden." I hung up and watched through the window as FBI agents escorted David and Jennifer to separate cars. Jennifer was screaming at the agents. David just looked broken. 3 weeks later, I sat in Thomas Chen's office reviewing final legal documents. David and Jennifer were facing federal fraud charges. Their business had been seized, their assets frozen. But that morning had brought an unexpected visitor. "Mrs. Sullivan, there's someone here to see you. Says his name is Richard Torres, and he has something that belongs to you." The man who entered was in his 60s, well-dressed, with the careful demeanor of law enforcement. In his hands was a familiar blue velvet box. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm the one who bought your husband's watch from the pawn shop." I stared at him confused. "How did you know to find me?" Richard smiled and set the box on Thomas's desk. "Because Robert Sullivan hired me 20 years ago to protect this watch if anything ever happened to him." "I don't understand." "I'm a retired federal marshal. Your husband contracted me to monitor certain situations. When the watch appeared at Golden State Pawn, I was notified immediately." Thomas was taking notes furiously. "You had surveillance on David Sullivan?" "Among other things." Robert was thorough in his preparations. Richard opened the velvet box, revealing Robert's Rolex. "But there's something else you need to know about this watch." He turned it over and pressed something on the back. A second hidden compartment opened, smaller than the first. Inside was a micro SD card. "Robert recorded everything, Mrs. Sullivan. Every conversation David had about manipulating you, every meeting with lawyers, every discussion about what to do with your assets after you were gone." The room spun slightly. Robert was recording David for 18 months. Audio, video, financial records, everything needed to ensure David could never successfully challenge your mental competency or your right to Robert's inheritance. Richard inserted the SD card into Thomas's computer. The screen filled with folders of evidence. "Your husband was a brilliant man," Thomas said admiringly. "He turned David's greed into a legal trap." I picked up Robert's watch, feeling its familiar weight in my hands. For 43 years, I'd thought I was married to a simple accountant who worried about money. Instead, I'd been married to a master strategist who'd spent 2 years orchestrating the most elaborate protection plan in legal history. "Mrs. Sullivan, your husband asked me to give you a final message if this day ever came." He handed me one last envelope. Inside, in Robert's handwriting, "Margaret, you were always stronger than you knew. I just made sure you'd have the tools to prove it. Love always, Robert." 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of Chicago Children's Hospital watching workers install a brass plaque that read, "The Robert Sullivan Memorial Wing, funded by Margaret Sullivan." Robert's money had been more than enough to secure my future and fund the hospital expansion he'd always dreamed about. The final irony was that David's attempt to steal from me had directly resulted in the largest charitable donation in the hospital's history. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas Chen. "David's sentencing hearing is next week. They're recommending 2 years federal prison plus full restitution. Jennifer took a plea deal for 18 months. Still want to attend?" I typed back, "No, I have better things to do." And I did. At 73, I was finally living the life Robert protected for me. I'd bought a small house near the lake, joined 3 book clubs, and started volunteering at the hospital twice a week. For the first time in decades, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what my family expected. My doorbell rang as I was preparing dinner. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman with David's eyes and a nervous smile. "Grandma Margaret, it's Melissa, David's daughter." I hadn't seen her since Robert's funeral, when she was finishing college. I opened the door. "Melissa, what a surprise!" "I know I should have called first." She was twisting her hands nervously. "I heard about David and Jennifer, about what they did to you. I wanted to apologize." "You have nothing to apologize for." "I do, though. I knew something was wrong. Dad kept asking weird questions about Grandpa Robert's financial accounts. I should have said something." I studied my granddaughter's face, seeing Robert's honesty there. "Come in, sweetheart. Let's talk." Over dinner, Melissa told me about her new job teaching elementary school, her engagement to a young doctor, and her guilt about her father's crimes. "I keep thinking I should visit him in prison," she said, "but I'm so angry about what he did to you." Anger is normal, but David is still your father. How can you not hate him? I thought about Robert's letter, about the choice he'd given me between forgiveness and justice. Because hate would mean he still had power over me, I choose peace instead. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "I missed you so much. Jennifer told everyone you were getting confused, that you didn't want to see us anymore. I never stopped wanting to see you, and I never will." As Melissa helped me clear the dishes, she paused at Robert's photo on the mantel. "I always wondered why Grandpa Robert wore that watch every single day. He must have really loved it." I smiled, thinking about the 2 hidden compartments, the offshore account, the elaborate protection plan that had saved my life. He loved what it protected. That night, after Melissa left with promises to visit every week, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. Robert's watch was on my wrist, keeping perfect time. He'd been gone 8 months, but somehow he was still taking care of me. The greatest love stories aren't about passion or romance. They're about protection, about someone loving you enough to fight battles you don't even know you're facing. Robert had spent 2 years preparing for a war I never saw coming, ensuring that his death wouldn't leave me defenseless against his own son's greed. Some people spend their whole lives looking for that kind of love. I was lucky enough to wear it on my wrist for 43 years. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything? Your story matters. Drop it in the comments.